It's a true delight that we have Mr. Ashok Chawla with us this afternoon. He has been at the helm of India's economy through perhaps the most challenging times that our economy has gone through in the last few decades. It may not be an overstatement to say that the Indian economy has been one of the sturdiest ones to bounce back from the crisis of 2008. And he's been there at the helm and has been, in a sense, navigating the ship through those fairly troubled waters. So it's great to have him here. I would request Mr. Chawla to make his opening remarks. Sir, while making your opening remarks, if you could concentrate a bit on how you see the state of the Indian economy today, particularly some of the creeping imbalances that we are now beginning to see. Inflation, which is now looking fairly stubborn. The fiscal deficit, which continues to be fairly high, despite the fact that we've got a larger amount of money from the 3G licenses than that we had expected to get. Also the fact that the current account deficit is again stubbornly large. So there are some fears that some of these structural imbalances which had visited us earlier may be creeping back on us. So keeping that as the background and the challenges that you have and your assessment of the economy and the kind of reform measures that you would be having in the pipeline to address some of these things.
Thank you, Raghav. That's quite an agenda that you've set for me. But let me try and address some of these things. Just to put it in perspective, the Indian economy really opened up, as you would know, in the early 90s. Opened up from the kind of regulated environment in which the economy used to operate. And the period after 1991, growth certainly improved, but the real benefit, the real impact was witnessed from about 2000 onwards. So the period from 2000 to 2007 or so is really the period of high growth which the economy witnessed, which averaged about 7%, more precisely shorter time slice between 2003, 2004 to 2007, it was about 8.5% or so. The Indian economy is very substantially propelled and driven by domestic demand. It's not export-led. The percentage of exports to GDP is less than 25%. Total trade, exports plus imports as a percentage of GDP is about 45-46%. So there is certainly a fairly high degree of integration through the trade channels, but it's not as if the main engine of growth comes from external demand. The financial system and the financial sector has been quite tightly regulated. That used to be one of the complaints against the financial system, at least till 2007. After that, there has been appreciation. When we've seen what has happened in many other parts of the world, there has been appreciation of the kind of robust regulation supervision which the Indian financial system, Indian banking system has been through. And therefore, in that perspective, the coupling with the global economy was somewhat limited, not that fatal. When the international financial crisis hit the world, the immediate fear was to see what is going to be the impact, how is it going to hit. And of course, it hit the whole world, that virus. It hit through various channels, the trade channel, through the money markets, through the financial sector, but in varying degrees. For different countries, in India, different sectors were hurt to different extents, depending on the kind of integration or the involvement in the global economy. The response, as was the response in many other countries, was that monetary policy, of course, has to play its part, and so the monetary policy, which was very accommodative prior to that, went to the other side. It sort of became restrictive. The policy which was restrictive became accommodative, and the fiscal interventions came in a big way through the public spending by the government, because it was very clear that unless spending increases, unless government comes in and takes the place of the private sector, which is shy, where the animal spirits are now sort of weak and not visible, the economy will go into a tailspin. Fortunately, this combination of the fiscal policy, monetary policy, and of course the international coordination which took place at the G20 forum helped in revival of the economy. But the net result was that the fiscal deficit, which prior to 2007-8 was 2.7% or so, and the idea was to keep it around that level below 3%, suddenly went up from 2.7% of GDP to 6%. And that was in the year 2008-9, 2009-10, it was slightly higher. In 2010-11, which is the current fiscal year, April 2010 to March 11, the target we have set is 5.5%. So the contraction is now taking place, and it's not just this year, but the roadmap for the medium term over 3 years has been spelt out, put in the public domain through Parliament. The contraction in the fiscal deficit is taking place both because we can, in a calibrated manner, but in a carefully calibrated manner, reduce the spending, and the tax concessions which were given out post-crisis have slowly been reduced. But necessarily, as in many other countries, it's a tightrope walk between ensuring that growth doesn't really become a casualty, and on the other hand, ensuring that the finances of the country as a whole don't go for a 6. So that's the tight kind of balancing act which is taking place, which we've been trying to do.